I'm going to show y'all what I think is a new idea as far as chicken feeders go. I searched all over the internet, couldn't find anything like it, so I'm calling it original. If I'm wrong, if there's something like this out there already, let me know. I didn't find it, but I'm calling it, I don't know, Shut's chicken feeder? Maybe I'll think of a better name, but here it is. So I was looking at building what suggested these things right here on Amazon because I was having a lot of waste with my regular chicken feeder that I've been using, and this thing just kind of sucks. They poop in it, they scratch the food out all over the ground, but the main problem is this dude right here, my scissor beak chicken, and whenever it goes to eat it, it just throws food everywhere. It doesn't have a very accurate mouth, I guess. So I was looking at these no waste chicken feeders, and I found that you can make the same thing out of PVC like this. So it's just a bucket with 4 PVC elbows in it, and those elbows, each one of them costs about as much as a bucket itself. These buckets are $3 at Home Depot. I wanted to have more than 4. You can only fit 4 PVC elbows in there. I wanted to have more, so I have 14 chickens. I'd need, probably 12 holes, so I would need 3 of those buckets. So 12 elbows at $3 each plus 3 buckets at $3 each. It's starting to add up, so I wanted to get more holes per bucket, and I wanted to be able to close it off. So let's look at this picture here. It's from the internet. There's your PVC elbow, and I wanted to be able to close that off because I want to ration my chickens, and also want to be able to close that at night so that rats and stuff don't get in there. So I would have had to buy even more fittings in order to put a PVC cap on each one of these, and every time I come out here to feed, I'd have to take 4 different caps off of each bucket so they can eat, and that would turn into a time waster. So I wanted something that I could close, and that these buckets allow me to do that easily. Get your head out. Oh, get your head out. I'm going to turn it on this demonstration. So I just turned that, and it closes all 6 holes at once. There's 6 holes on this, and got a little spout in there that's dropping the food down into this bottom cavity, and achieving the same concept as that. That basically creates a spout at the bottom, and then they eat from there. So not a whole lot of difference. So I was able to achieve 6 holes that I can close up all at once with no extra hardware. Well, there's 2 extra buckets. So the buckets at Home Depot cost the same as the PVC 90s. So 3 buckets, that's $9. Well, plus a lid, that's another $2, I think. So about $11 is what it takes to build one of these, and I will show you in detail how to build one. Then you got some hardware, 2 bolts with nuts and 4 screws. So you should be able to use like whatever you have laying around to build it, but if you don't, you have to factor in the cost of that. The only problem I'm seeing with it so far is like this big dude right here, this rooster. He's got this big old comb and he can't really get his head in there. Those are 2.5-inch holes, and I might need to build a new version of this with bigger holes. But if I do that, I won't be able to fit 6 holes on the bucket. It's going to be probably 5 at the most. Yeah, that red rooster and this other big rooster, both of them seem to have trouble getting food out of it. But my little scissor beak, he loves it. So a couple more things about this design that I didn't like that I wanted to improve on is that the bucket, the capacity of the bucket is taken up, a lot of it, by these PVC pipes that are, taking up the volume. So this design actually holds more than 1 bucket worth of food, because the stop bucket here with the handle it's got its whole volume there as it would, for just a plain bucket. Plus you have this cavity of food down here at the bottom. So it actually holds about 35 pounds worth of food, each one of those. And I think I read somewhere that this kind only holds 20. Yeah, so 35 pounds worth of food. Everything you see right here on this table is all you need. A 2.5-inch hole saw, screwdriver, ruler or an angle, a cheap plastic cup. This is from Dollar General or Dollar Tree, I'm not sure. It's more robust than a Dixie cup, but just a cheap cup. Sharpie, 5/16 drill bit, 5/32 drill bit, 4 wood screws, 2 1/4-inch bolts with a lock nut, and 2 washers, a wrench, sandpaper, duct tape, and a cheap saw. Oh, and a drill, of course. 3 buckets, a lid. These are the Home Depot buckets, and I got this easy off lid. That's better than the orange lids, in my opinion. You're going to see me use some other tools that aren't on the table. They're right here. These are things you don't need, but I have. They make life easier, so I'm going to use them. Jigsaw, flashlight, hacksaw, torch, and a nut driver. Step 1, align your buckets. Don't have to be exact. Mark them where you have them aligned, and number them 1, 2, 3. That'll help you keep track as we go along. Actually, don't mark them here, mark them there, because we're about to cut that. I want to take the handles off of bucket 2 and 3. You can get these off without cutting the buckets, but I find it's easier to cut the plastic that holds them in. You cut that off and they just come off. Do that on 2 and 3. So now it should look like this. No handles on buckets 2 and 3, only 1. Alright, you want to make a mark 2 inches down. This is bucket 3. 2 inches, kind of hard to see there. We're going to do that on both sides. This is aligned with the old handle. 2. Okay. Right now I got buckets 1, 2, and 3 all put back together. I got a 5/16 drill bit in my drill, and this is assuming that you're going to be using 1/4-inch bolts like I am. You want to drill a 5/16 hole on those 2 marks that we made, right straight through all 3 buckets. Alright, now once you have your hole, you can put a bolt through it, and put a washer and a nut on the back side. I'm going to use my nut driver to tighten that, but you don't need a nut driver, you can use a wrench. Alright, I installed the bolt through there. It's not tight, just snug. You don't want to torque it down. And that'll keep the buckets aligned. And then I'll do the same over here. I'll drill straight through and put the bolt. Now you want to make a line all the way around the bucket at 4 3/4. 4 3/4. I'm just going to move this around. All the way around the bucket like that. Alright, so now we have a line at 4 3/4 from the bottom of bucket number 3, and we want to make 6 evenly distributed marks around that line. So I measured it, and this line, the circumference of this line is 33 inches. So that means a hole every 5.5 inches. So if you have a measuring tape that's like a seamstress measuring tape that's cloth and you can wrap around there, that would be the easiest. Just mark it every 5.5 inches. I don't have one of those, so what I'm going to do is cut a piece of tape 33 inches long, make marks every 5.5 inches on that, and then put it on the bucket and transfer my marks. Alright, there's my piece of tape. I measured it every 5.5 and 11 inches. That's as long as my ruler is. So 5.5, 11, and move it. 5.5, 11. 5.5, 11. Alright, so I wrapped the tape all the way around the bucket along the line that I made. Now I'm going to come back with my Sharpie and transfer those marks onto the bucket, and then remove my tape. It's important to note that where the 2 ends of the tape come together, that is a mark as well. Alright, this is the fun part. We're going to drill 2.5-inch holes on each one of those marks. And this is probably the most expensive thing you need, other than the drill, which you should already have, because everyone should already have a drill. The 2.5-inch hole saw I think it's like $30, but if you don't want to buy one, surely someone you know has one, especially if they're an electrician. Sorry, electricians. Alright, so we're drilling through 2 buckets here. And you do that for all 6 holes. So as you're drilling these holes, you're going to start getting these little discs coming out. Don't throw all of them away. You're going to need at least 2 of them later. But you're not going to be able to make it all the way through to the end of the project without getting these out. At some point they stack up and you can't drill any more holes. So that's what these little slots are for. You can stick a screwdriver or something else in there and you can push those out. It takes 2 hands to do it, but just push on them like that. So now it should look something like this. 6 evenly spaced holes that are centered right between the bottom of that bucket and the bottom of this bucket, making a little chamber there. Now you're going to need to drill a hole in the center of bucket number 1 in the bottom. You're going to have to unbolt these to do that. Alright, so I got bucket number 1 here, and we're going to need to drill right on top of that nibble, and that's kind of tough to do. You're just going to take it slow and establish a bit of a hole there, and then once you get through with your bit, then you can go ahead and just take the hole saw to it. So something that'll make that easier, switch to a smaller bit, go ahead and make a pilot hole, and then you'll be able to do it with the hole saw easier. Alright, so I put bucket number 1 back into number 2 and 3, and then you're going to rotate buckets 1 and 2 independently of 3 until your holes are blocked off. And then you're going to want to get a mark from where the hole is in 1 and 2. That's where the flashlight comes in. So I got the flashlight inside the buckets, and we can see, I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but as I move the flashlight past, you can see where those holes are. So we're going to make a mark right there with the Sharpie. Before you mark that, make sure you go around and check all your holes, make sure they're all 100% blocked. Yeah, okay. So go ahead and mark that hole. Alright, so I made that mark on both sides. This side and on the other side. Over here. And we're going to check, verify that that is 2 inches, which is a little bit off, so I'm going to use the ruler to get it an actual 2 inches, and we'll make a drill hole. Right, now we removed bucket 3 from 1 and 2 because for these holes we don't want to drill through all 3 buckets, we just want to drill through number 3, and I'm going to put a 5/16 hole right where we just marked. Alright, so now we got 2 holes on both sides of bucket number 3, and we're going to turn that into a slot. So we'll take a piece of tape. So I used tape to make a straight slot from that hole to that hole, and I went a little bit away from the edge of the hole because it's better to have a little bit of play in the slot. So I'm going to cut that with my jigsaw along the line. You don't need to use a jigsaw, something like this cheapo saw, and that's something I wanted to mention. You don't have to spend a whole lot of money on the hole saw because you're just cutting plastic here. This was good for cutting, you know, metal, wood, whatever. But you can get something super cheap from Harbor Freight that'll do the same thing for plastic. But we're just going to cut along that line and that line, and turn that into a slot. Alright, so now that's a slot, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And once you have 2 slots, put buckets 1 and 2 back into 3, and you should see your bolt hole, original bolt hole. 1 and 2 will stay together, and they'll slide within 3. So that's the closed position and the open position. So you're going to stick your bolts in, but it's going to go through one of these first. Remember I said we would use a couple of these? So that's like a big washer that goes in your hole there. And then you put a regular washer and a nut on the back side. And you're not going to tighten this. That's why we're using these lock nuts. You don't want this tight, you want it loose, sloppy, so that, because if you make it tight, then your buckets won't slide against each other. Alright, so this is about as tight as you want it. You can still move it by hand, and it's wobbly on both sides, and just test if you can turn that easily. Alright, if that's all good, then you're going to take it back apart. Take your bolts out. Alright, set your bolts aside, and we're going to work on bucket number 2. For bucket number 2, we need to cut the bottom out. So I'm going to drill a hole, and then I'm going to use my jigsaw, and I'm going to cut just all the way around the very outside. And you want to get as close to that edge as you can, touching it with your saw blade. Alright, so there's the hole I started, and then I just went all the way around. Finished. Cut it out. Alright, now we're on bucket 1, and for bucket 1, we're going to turn this cup into a spout. The spout needs to be 3 inches from the top of from the bottom of the bucket. So I'm going to cut this off. For that I'm going to use my hacksaw, but you could use any kind of saw. Cut that off. Alright, there's my cup with the bottom cut off, and then we're going to want to make a line 3 inches down from there. Now you're going to take your scissors or your shears, whatever you're using, and cut straight lines from the rim of the cup all the way to the line and stop. So I'm making cuts about every 1/2 inches or 3/4 inches. I'm going to do that all the way around. Then you're going to go all the way around and bend those tabs as close to straight out as you can. And put the cup centered over the hole and hold it in place while you drill a hole through one of the tabs and into the bucket. using a small drill bit. This is a 5/32, and then put a screw through it. And the size of drill bit that you use is going to depend on your screw size. These are, I think, number 12 screws. If you don't have number 12 screws, you might be using something smaller, and then you need to use a bit even smaller than 5/32. You want it to be smaller than the shank, see where the teeth are raised. You want it to be smaller than the inner portion, if that makes sense. But then you just screw that onto your hole that you made. Use a screwdriver for that, because if you use a drill, chances are you're just going to strip your hole out. Remember, you're screwing into plastic, and it's thin plastic, so you don't want to torque it too much. Just get it snug. All right. Once you have one screw in, then you can go make sure you're centered, and do one on the opposite side. And do 2 more at least. I would do at least 4 screws, maybe more. I'm going with 4. All right, there we go. And put it together. Should look something like that. We're almost done. One thing you need to do now is clean up these holes where the chickens are going to be sticking their heads through, because they're kind of gnarly. So for that, and you need to do it to both of these. So what I do is take the razor blade, and at 90 degrees, so you don't want to cut like that, but you want it 90 degrees and rake it across like that. That seems to work best for me, because when you try to cut, it cuts into the plastic and it gets hung up, and you end up leaving even more jagged edges. So 90 degrees and just drag it along. And once you get the big pieces off, if you have a torch, you can light that up and just cook the edges here a little bit, and they'll soften right up, and they'll smooth over sort of automatically. You do want to get the big chunks off first, though. If you don't have a torch, that's what the sandpaper's for. You can go over it with some sandpaper and make it smoother. So I didn't finish cleaning up those holes, but we'll pretend that I did. Go ahead and put this thing together. One and two. Sorry, 2 and 3. Then 1. And you just put your bolts back in the way we had them before, and you're done. Probably also worth mentioning that you should clean out all this plastic shavings out of everything. Give everything a good wipe down before you put food in it and give it to your chickens. And clean up nasty stuff like that. Don't put that in there. And another thing to mention is that these are Home Depot buckets. They're not food grade buckets. I bought these to practice with because I thought I'd be going through a bunch of them before I figured it out. But turns out I pretty much got it right with the first edition, I think. So I have all these extra buckets. That's what I use for the demonstration, but you'd want to get some white food grade ones, preferably if you can find them.